Hello and welcome back to Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, discuss the whole art of writing, self-publishing, marketing, advertising your books, everything to do with this crazy industry that we are mixed up in. And today we are joined by an extremely special guest who I am very, very excited to talk to. Alessandra Torre, who not only is a New York Times best-selling author, she has a movie based on one of her books on Passionflix, but also she is one of the brains behind Inker's Con, which is a brand new conference for writers, but a prodigiously successful one with both an in-person and a digital aspect to it. So Alessandra, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are extremely pleased you made it. And before we move on, last but not least, the man with the ideas is Craig Touch, owner and founder of Hidden Gems, a writer himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing well. I'm excited as well. Like I was saying to you guys sort of before we started, like I had sent out an email to all of our authors asking about conferences and which ones people were looking forward to and all that. And all the responses I got back, the majority of them mentioned Inker's Con. And, for a conference that just started in 2019, born in the pandemic pretty much, to go from that to the one that everyone's talking about and everyone wants to go to, I think that's awesome. So, thanks for joining us and coming on to talk to us about it. And, let's hear what you have to say about Inker's Con.
Absolutely. And I really love this topic because for me, at least as an author, I started in 2012 and my very first conference was Romantic Times in Kansas City. At the time, I was in Kansas City. And the friends and the things that I learned at that conference really cemented, my career. I based so many decisions and I still have those friendships today. And so I've always been very passionate about conferences. Inker's Con was originally going to be an online conference, kind of similar. I have taught online classes in writing and marketing, and I had really maxed out my knowledge base, right? Like I had put everything I knew out there, but there were so many areas I really wasn't an expert in, or I wasn't succeeding in, where I was seeing other authors or other experts killing it. So originally it was the thought, like me and my sister who run Inker's Con, we said, let's bring like all of the brains together and film them, professionally, all in one location so we can control the sound and the look and the lighting. And that was really where Inker's Con was born, was this idea of bringing a bunch of people together and filming, each of them speaking on their topic. And then it was kind of, well, if we're going to fly everybody in and have everybody stay at the conference, like it seems silly not to let authors come and watch that, right? And then interact. And then it was like one thing led to another, and suddenly we had an aspiring authors boot camp, and before we knew it, we had a conference. But that initial thought, that initial desire to have high quality footage that could be enjoyed by anyone, no matter where they're at in the world, was still there, right? That was still kind of our primary purpose. And so from the very beginning, Inker's Con was always a hybrid. And at the time, it was the only authors conference I was aware of, at least, that was available both virtually and in person. So we bring everyone together. We have a live, full-fledged conference, but we have a team of videographers. We have 8 videographers that are there. They film everything from multiple camera angles. Everything is done top-notch. All of the presentations are filmed. None of the fun, like, the open bar, none of that is filmed, but the presentations are all filmed. And then we package it, and 6 weeks later, it launches digitally. And all of our live attendees also have digital access. We launch it digitally, and we have 3 full weeks of digital events and networking events and things like that. And then attendees have access for 6 years, so they can watch the content for 6 years.
That's awesome. It's like you almost backed into this COVID-proof formula, right? That everybody else who had a conference was like, I don't know what to do. How are we going to do this? You had built it from day one to be digital. And then it just happened that that's exactly what you needed when the whole world went digital. And that's awesome. I'm so glad. And then like, what's cool too is that, the the live, you didn't give up on the live part, because I only went to one conference, and this was a few years ago. And that was one of the best parts, was the networking and meeting all the other authors and all the other speakers and stuff, and just, talking to people that do what you do and understand you, as opposed to your family who are like, yeah, he's just sitting in his room banging around on his keyboard and knows what he's doing over there, right? Nobody gets it, right? But then you're in this whole conference of people that get it.
It's a totally unique, and it is great because, like you said, we're kind of all on our own island. I mean, we now have been able to build digital relationships and online relationships, and the pandemic was great in that aspect, in that it really did blossom a lot of virtual interaction. But there's still just nothing like it, like the synergy, the energy, being around, in a line at the coffee shop, and everyone around you is an author, and you immediately have something to talk about, which is, what do you write? And if they're in your genre, great. If they're not in your genre. And that was another thing with Inkers Con, is I wanted it to be multi-genre. We are fiction, adult fiction focused. Which isn't to say that we don't have middle grades and children's books and nonfiction attending, but we really, our focus and what our classes are built around is fiction. But it's multi-genre, because me, as a romance author and also a suspense author, but my bread and butter was always romance. But I wanted to know what the people in fantasy that were killing it, like, what are they doing? What can I steal from what authors in other genres are doing and bring to the romance marketing that might not be here yet? So I really wanted to learn and interact and see how authors in other genres wrote and told stories, and kind of cherry pick what appealed to me for my own career.
Yeah, for sure. And then you're filming it all. It's all available digitally so that, people can watch it later. But, the cool thing is too, and it sort of goes back to the idea that, a lot of these other conferences, it was, I'm not going to say an afterthought as so much as they were forced to go digital, right? So it wasn't sort of as built into the whole idea. So, their digital versions, they might not be as good or whatever, whereas yours was built to be digital. So you have that, that the digital side is going to be quality. And so you have both now, right? You have the live and the digital. People don't have to do both. They can do one or the other. So how does it work? If you go to the live, do you have access to the digital as well, or you just have access to the filmed talks and workshops and all that?
So any live ticket includes a full digital ticket. And the digital ticket, what another blessing of the pandemic, if you can have any blessings in that situation, is that before, for us, the focus was really on the content, like delivering the content digitally. But the networking aspects, we didn't just pay as much of attention to. Like, they happened, and there was crazy engagement in the Facebook group. And we had from the very first year what we call roundtables, which is any attendee can start or can host a roundtable discussion on any topic. So sometimes it's like networking, like urban fantasy authors meet each other, but other times it's like, I want to teach about Amazon keywords, and so someone will have a roundtable discussion about that, or it's let's share audiobook marketing ideas. And so different people attend the Zoom chat and talk about that, and it's at a specific time. And that has really just blown up. We had over 100 last year as part of the digital. And so every hour, basically, of those 3 weeks, there was a chat going on somewhere that somebody could join. And most of those were recorded, so you could watch the replays later. We had one that lasted 3.5 hours. And it was the most popular. It was about men talking about writing erotica and answering questions like sex from a male point of view. And it was like our by far most popular. It had over 1,000 views of the replay because it was so interesting. But so that really then allowed us to really focus. It allowed all of our retailers, Amazon, Apple, to come, and Kobo, to come and meet with attendees online. And then now that they've done it once, like, they have to keep doing, like they're hooked. So it's great, because previously you could only meet with Amazon if you were at the live conference. But now we have opportunities to meet with all of our retailers and our sponsors on the digital side, and you're really getting kind of a full-fledged conference experience from home.
Wow. So who's showing up from Amazon? Like, is this like a KDP rep, or like somebody from that team, or a group of people from that team, or?
Yeah, last year we had Goodreads reps, we had KDP reps, we had people from their ads department. So they hosted roundtables on certain topics, and they also did just open office hours where anybody could come in and talk about a specific thing. And so there were a lot of different departments there.
Yeah, I can only imagine some of the bitch sessions that must you might have to squash it. Oh, okay, this isn't an Amazon attack.
I always feel bad when they because I'm like, man, like, because I know it's a lot of them, especially the one-on-one appointments. Like, there's just a lot of ranting that goes on, or authors venting about a certain thing. So, but they seem to take in stride. I think they've built a thick skin with different things.
Yeah. You don't want to scare them away, so
No.
as long as they can be able to give their message as well as hear, some of the feedback, which I think for authors, a lot of them, that's a great thing, right? Because I hear from authors all the time, they don't have a way to contact different reps at different companies, right? So giving them sort of that one-on-one face time allows them to do that. That's like almost worth the price of admission right there.
Absolutely. We have BookBub coming this year and doing both to the conference and to the digital conference. And that's what I imagine in their appointments. It's got to be like, how do I get a BookBub deal? How often do they hear that? You know what I mean? Or I've done everything I could do. I've applied 14 times. Like, can I send cookies to some address? But what do I have to do? And I asked them once on a pre-call, I said, do y'all get like gifts? And they get stuff shipped to their offices all the time. They're like, we won't call them bribes, but
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, are they gifts or are they bribes? That's that's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't even have thought to do that, to send them.
I find it. Oh, I was just going to say, my background is in corporate communications and events and things like this. I personally find what you've accomplished astonishing. I worked with a company last year that had a seat booked to this live conference. It all got turned digital. And so the sticker price for them, which we're talking multiple $10,000s of dollars, was there. And in the end, their virtual booth got 12 visitors. And so it's like so many people and companies just were not able to make that work. And then straight out of the gate, you seem to have got the formula right. So that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, we have thousands of digital attendees, which is fantastic. And it's great because they're all over the world. And they're everybody from aspiring and newbies to, multiple New York Times bestsellers. So it's great that we've been able to build that. And I think it definitely helped us having a leg up, because so many, especially that first year, 2020, it was just so late in the game. Like, for us, we weren't sure. It was 2 months before the conference, and we were like, should we do it? Should we not do it? What do we do? Because it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. But when we said, okay, let's just kill the live event and only do digital, there was no learning curve for us. So that really allowed us, and our audience was used to it. Like, our audience already knew about attending, because you have a lot of authors also who sign up for these online summits or online conferences, and they don't attend, or they watch 1 or 2 classes and that's it, and we really want them to get the value for their money. And we really want them to watch as much as possible, because that's how we get them to come back, is to really get the bang for their buck.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you grow it so fast? Like, what did you do at the beginning when you were not a conference, and then all of a sudden you're a conference? How did you get people involved, and not just like the attendees, which is one part of it, but also all the people that are going to speak? And I'm sure you do other things even before Inkers Con, right? Like, you're besides being a best-selling author, I've seen that you have the Goodreads webinars, and so I know you have probably a good network of authors right now, even before this. But like, what did you do to sort of get the word out and get everyone interested in it?
I'm to be totally honest, first year was really hard. And the first year was so stressful. We were losing money. We lost money with the live event, definitely, because I mean, our videographer budget alone is, tens of thousands of dollars. And then you have editing, and I mean, so the first year you already have the normal expenses, and my thought was, 200 tickets, that'll be easy to sell, and so I committed to X amount of hotel rooms and everything else. And we had to cover over 100 hotel rooms with the hotel our first year. So our first year which was our only live year, we were very small. I think we had 80 attendees. I already had a built-in author audience because my online classes, and I had a Facebook group that might have had 2,000 members at the time. Now it's grown to over 20,000. But I had an audience. I already had connections. I had connections with Goodreads. I had connections with Amazon. And that first year, Amazon was our only sponsor at the, or retailer at the live event. And, but then it had a long, and so when we launched the live a month later, we had a couple hundred, maybe digital attendees, but word of mouth spread. And we ended up selling almost 3 times as many tickets after the conference launched. So in those 9 months after, we released all the classes, and from that point on, it's all available on demand. Somebody can buy a ticket. Somebody could buy a ticket now to the 2019 conference, and binge watch those classes if they want. So, so through webinars and things like that, we sold tickets to that conference all the way up until we started selling tickets for 2020. But that first year, there was definitely, it was like, well, maybe this was a fun experiment, but maybe, like the stress and the finances just aren't there to make it work. But then the attendee response was fantastic, and our returning attendee rate was fantastic. So then the next year, everything was so much easier, even with the pandemic. And our costs were so much less for the second year, because everybody was, webcamming from home for our presenters. But then the attendees have really pushed it from then on. Like, I used my audience for the initial launch of the conference. And then after that, attendee referrals, attendees talking about it, authors talking about it in author groups. That's how we grew from there. And then we had numbers and data, so we could go to the other retailers and the other sponsors and say, hey, Amazon was at the conference last year, you should come this year, and here's how many views, they had, and how many appointments they had with authors and things like that. And then once we were able to it's one of those things like, fear of missing out or whatever, if we can get 2 or 3 of the retailers, then we can normally get all of them, They don't want to be left out of the party.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, word of mouth is the cheapest way to advertise, and it's the best way, right?
Yeah.
Authors have their communities, they have the places they talk to. And if you just do a good job, authors are pretty loyal. They'll, they want to tell their friends about the services that really work for them. And, we see it all the time with Hidden Gems. And so it really speaks to me that that's how it worked, because that totally makes sense to me. It's like, if you did good on your first year and everybody started talking about it and sharing it, then yeah, it's just going to snowball from there for sure. And I love that, pitting them against each other. But, well, Apple, Amazon, you don't want them to be the only one. They're already exclusive with KDP. I mean, come on, you don't want them to be exclusive with InkersCon. That's hilarious.
So I was going to ask you, you are a very established author yourself. And the first live show in 2019, what is it that you learned that you didn't know before?
Oh, man. I'm trying to go back in time with 2019. 2019 for me, I learned a ton about one of the best classes, Kindle Unlimited Marketing, because it was something I had just started to move into KU, but I wasn't really, I didn't really know my way around it. So Kindle Unlimited Marketing was big for me there. And craft classes. I have neglected craft classes my entire career It's that boring stuff like that you don't want to deal with. But we had such a fantastic group of speakers that were so passionate, and I had to watch all the classes because, I'm proofing the edited videos and things like that. And I was amazed at how much I didn't know, like you find your way through books the more you write them, but a lot of it's just instinct or, training from reading tons of books. But that conference really taught me to fall in love with learning about craft, which again, before I had always been like, ugh, I want to go to the fancy fun stuff, which is the marketing stuff, but that really nailed that in. And then also just looking at your career as a business. So I took a legal class at that conference, and we have 4 pillars of Inker's Con: marketing, advertising, craft, and business. So we always include business. I taught a business plan class there. But that was, and then the last year, the biggest takeaway that I heard over and over again, and I will take it to my grave, is writing to market. Just, I always wrote what I wanted to write, and, that'll get you so far. And if you have a ridiculously huge audience, then go for it. But I met and heard from so many authors that really showed this is where I was, and this was the moment that I began to write to market, and this is what happened, and just how much incredibly easier of a job you can have if you understand your market and you write to it and you market to it and you blurb to it, and and you get those pieces in line. And I left from there and I said, you know what, if I'm going to spend 3 to 4 months on a book or 6 months on a book, I need to be smart about it, and I need to write it where it's going to have the biggest audience. And before, I'd always been like, oh, the passion, or, I need to write what's in my heart or whatever. And now I'm like, I'm either here to succeed and to grow my audience, or I'm doing this for fun and it's a hobby. And unfortunately for me, I need to succeed and make money, so I can pay my mortgage. So that was, if I'm going to spend time on a book, I want it to be a book that's found and read and loved. And so for that, I need to make sure that there is an audience for it and that I'm hitting the right notes for that audience.
That was probably one of the most succinctly important pieces of information that we could have ever given to people. And so there, go and discover it for yourself. I mean, is there going to be, do you rehash some of the materials that you do at Inker's Con and stuff like that? If people attended this year, was that the same sort of thing that they might end up taking away? Or is there new wisdom?
We always have a brand new agenda every year, but we bring back the speakers that are really loved and requested. We'll often bring them back to talk on a slightly different topic. And again, because normally the bad thing about a conference is it's like, oh, there's multiple tracks, and if I'm here, then I have to miss this other class. And later people are like, oh my gosh, that class was amazing. And it's like, you're never going to get to watch that. But that was another thing, is we want our live attendees to be able to relax and enjoy, the class, knowing that the other classes are being recorded. Or if they want to, skip classes and just sit and talk in the lobby with a group of people, everything's being recorded. So it's okay. So if you're watching this, if you're a 2020 attendee or 2021, Melanie Harlow's class on marketing, on writing to market, it's not really about writing to market, it's about creating a brand, is incredible. And one thing she said is, she's like, maybe she's like, I am known for writing spaghetti, right? Like spaghetti that's what I write, right? And her version of spaghetti is feel good romances that make readers happy when they read them, right? Small town feel good romances make readers happy. She goes, and there are some days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to write spaghetti. I want to write cotton candy or whatever. And she goes, but I make myself write spaghetti. And it's not just, and that's the other thing, is it's not just about writing to market or writing a book to market. It's about what is Alessandra Torre known for. And Alessandra Torre in the past has written whatever Alessandra Torre wanted to write. And that's a sports romance, and that's a forbidden romance. And I had a dark romance, and a celebrity romance. And I have been so incredibly inconsistent that even when I hit it big, and even if I had a New York Times bestseller, well, then the next book I wrote was something completely different, And so I would be building audiences, and then I would lose them with my next book. And what I should have done, and what an Amazon rep told me at the very first conference when I had lunch with them at that 2019 conference, is he said, the authors that we see that are killing it, they find their niche, whether it's Scottish 17th century time travel. They find their niche, they hit it, and then they write the same thing over and over again. And it's not sexy. I mean, it probably is sexy, but it's not, it's not the coolest thing in the world. And maybe you have other stuff you want to do, but they write it over and over again. And Susan Stoker is another. We've had her on the stage several times at Inkers Con. She'll be the first to tell you, she sells 7 figures a year consistently. She writes the same book over and over again. She writes a damsel in distress who's saved by a Navy SEAL. And that's what she writes. And that's what her audience wants. And they pre-order her books without thinking about it because they know what they're going to get. My readers have no earthly idea what they're going to get. And that is not a good thing. I used to think it was like, oh, great. It's not a good thing. And that has hurt me. And it's amazing that I've had the success I've had, knowing what I now know. And if I could go back and start it all over again. But you also have to find your niche, and you could be writing. I was interviewing Ryan Shao, I think is how you pronounce his last name. And he was writing like urban fantasy, and he switched to a form of thriller, and his career took off. But how many books did he write in urban fantasy before he found his niche? So it doesn't mean just keep barreling away, in a genre that you hate. You got to find where you fit. But then once you find that, the best business thing to do is to just keep sticking there.
And with any luck, you manage to find a way to be able to tell the stories you want to tell in a framework that meets those reader expectations, I guess.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to hear all that because, this is something that we've talked about so much on the blog and so much with authors when we have, one-on-one talks with them about all this stuff where it's finding your niche, but it's writing to market and, so many people, and it's fine, right? Because there are 2 different types of authors. There's the ones that are doing it for a living and that they want to make money and that's nothing wrong with that. And then there's the ones that they just want to write some books, right? They just want to be a writer. They just want to put it out there and maybe connect with some people and that's fine, right? And so, that's whatever type of author you are, that's fine. But the ones that want to make money, but are writing it the other way, where I just want to write whatever I want to write, those 2 don't often coincide, right? Or you have to figure out how to write what you want to write, but also make it to market, right? And it doesn't always mean selling out, which is what I think a lot of authors think it is, right?
I thought that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not. You can find a way to merge those 2, right? Or often, I mean, if you're writing some crazy, I'm sure there's some things we can think of that, they're never going to find their audience to the level that they want. But in general, you can tell
MMA romance.
Yeah, well, that's right. You used to write the MMA romance and you just couldn't find your market there.
Then you put the motorcycle in there, suddenly, boom.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, I think the biggest when I was writing romance, I think my biggest hit was a motorcycle romance, and that was back in the days of Sons of Anarchy. And so that was the way it was. It was like, oh, everybody likes that show, let's all write motorcycle romances, and then everyone started doing well with that. So no, I totally get it. It's great that that's one of those focuses at your conference, because that tells me that it's teaching people the right thing, right? That's awesome. So what do
break the rules? You just have to know the rules and be aware that you're breaking them, and have made that decision that I know that the right, not the right thing to do, but that this is the path that is quickest to success. And I am making a conscious decision that I want to go here because I really love this story, or really love how it is, or whatever, or I want to live in a world with no stress and just write for fun. And that's great. But it helps because there's so many people who are also in that seat with you who want to be successful, so you just want to make sure that you understand the rules, and then you can decide whether you want to break them.
And you know what, when you get to a certain level of success, and I think that that's probably where you are now and why you can be much more successful writing different stuff, is you can do a lot of things differently and you can take a lot more chances, and it won't affect you as negatively once you've got a built-in audience and once you've got to a level of success. There's a lot of times where we give some advice to an author and we say, if you want to succeed, you should do this, and they'll point to some like big name author. Yeah.
Well,
that
write whatever she wants to
yeah.
write.
Or, you know,
she's going to sell it. Yeah.
Yeah. That person has a cover that has absolutely nothing on it except for the title, and it does great. How come I can't do that? Well, because they have 1 million people reading their book regardless of what they write, you know, so you can get there, but you have to get there, you know, and you know, so that it's great. Yeah. That's, so in general, so I had kind of wanted to talk about this at the beginning, and we jumped right into it. But for conferences in general, for authors that have never been to a conference, what are they going for? What do you think is the main focus that why should they go, and what are they going to get out of it? Is really what I think a lot of people, a lot of newer authors at least, are wondering. And then sort of also, what do newer authors get out of it versus what do more experienced authors get out of it?
Yeah, I love this question. So if you're an author and you're thinking, should I go to an author's conference? What is the purpose? Why should I go? So there are a couple of types of people that authors conferences are great for. One is if you enroll in online classes or online courses and then you never do them because, you have shiny things going on in your life and you have, and you get bogged down and you just don't do it. I can tell you right now, that's me. Like, that is the type of person that I am. And it isn't until later when I have a very specific need, I need to learn Amazon ads, then I'll go back and I'll watch those stuff. But it's hard for me to do that. Jamie Albright is an author friend of mine. We were just talking about this on Clubhouse. But so if you're that type of person, going to a conference is fantastic because it's really forcing you to take a vacation from your normal life and spend a weekend or a day or however long the conference is that is 100% focused on you and your career. So it's really like a gift to yourself, right? And you'll go there and you'll walk away with knowledge, and you'll go and walk away with connections, and typically a lot of inspiration and excitement, right? It's like a shot in the arm that gives you this boost, right? Where you are ready to just take on everything and you can't wait to put into action everything you've learned. So there's that person, the person who needs to force themselves to be in a situation so that they can have those experiences and take advantage of that. And then you have other authors that are missing that community or that tribe, or they feel like they don't, they're kind of lost in this sea of a book world, and it's hard for them to form relationships and friendships on social media. I can tell you, it's really hard for me to do that because, I might have a snippet of a conversation here or there, but I'm not building any relationships with any people. So for that reason, going to a conference is great because you're really immersing yourself into the deep end, right? And you got to swim. And I would say, looking at our attendees, 95% of our attendees are coming alone. Most of them don't know anyone when they're starting out. We have chatter on our app. We have an app for the conference now. And like one of the most popular threads is, I don't know anyone, I'm coming, and they've already organized like 2 dinners. And so they're all going to meet, and they're all going to meet right before registration so that they can come in together. So it's great. Even if at the last final day, I was getting ready to head to the airport to fly home of our first conference, one of our boot campers, which boot campers was an aspiring author program we had, came up and said, I just want you to know, I'm leaving here with, she showed me on her phone, like 6 phone numbers of other authors that are in my genre. She goes, and I now have a co-writing partner, and she's going to start co-writing books with this person. And she was like, I am not that person. She's like, I was the kid who was always picked on in school. She's like, I am not social. I am awkward. She's like, I cannot believe like that and she's like, I was so afraid to come here. She had just retired from her job. She was a woman in her 60s, and everyone, I saw her with groups of people the entire time, and young, old. I mean, it was, a great mix, some in her genre, some not. But it's great because even if you are shy, and I can tell you, I was an extremely shy person before I, came into the book world. Offer to volunteer at the conference, because they'll put you to work, and they'll put you in a situation where you're meeting other people and you're interacting with attendees, and you have a job, and you're not just standing there like, nervous because everybody seems to be in a group. that's a great way to jump in. But if you're looking to meet other people and to talk craft and to, be immersed in this community in a way that you maybe haven't been able to, a conference is great. And typically, normally in ordinary society, you can always find a conference is within a couple hours of driving distance of you, even if it's not maybe your precise niche conference. There's normally, some sort of authors event, and there's almost always like a local writing group in your area, and you can, connect with them at a conference or connect with them and then all carpool to the conference. So that was a long answer to a short question.
It was a very good answer. It was a very good answer. I mean, I think that's the thing that probably resonates with you too. It's like I call people muggles who aren't writers. And it's like we're freaking insane people to them. Yeah. And it's like, it's not for most things, if you're a car guy, you can talk to a car guy and get a vague feeling. If you're into cross stitch or whatever, with writing, it's like, especially writing where you are successful. It's like the experiences you've gone through to reach that level of success puts you in a different world. And so going to a conference and speaking with people who hear the sound of the same trumpets must be amazing.
Yeah, and I think the networking is such a key thing, especially in a job where you spend most of your time by yourself, alone, And I mean, regardless of whether you have a relationship, you're married, or it's still a very lonely, solitary profession. And it's just the idea of getting out there, even if it is just virtual, right? Because you have those groups and stuff, but just the idea to get out there and to talk to all these different people and see what they're doing. I met a lot of people that I still talk to at the conference I went to, and one of them does some of the work. Julie, who does some of the blurb writing for us. I met her there, and it's just such a important thing to make sure that you're still being social when you're an author, and not staying in your little cave, your little writing cave.
There's also so much more information that's shared. Like you'll walk out of a class and, just standing there in the lobby for 15 minutes before the next class. And you're like, oh, that was really interesting what she said about putting books on pre-order on KU. And, and then someone's like, oh, I did that with my book XYZ and it was a total flop. But, it's hard a lot of times just online and in random social media groups. A lot of people keep things close to the chest and they don't share, or they don't give personal examples or share money amounts or things like that. But it's different when you're at a conference. Like it feels like you're in a protected bubble and you can share and discuss things that work and things that don't work for you. And I was really glad to see that also come out in roundtables online with Inkers Con, because it was the same thing. Like it's hard to just, make a random post that shares, the things you did that helped. But when you're in that conversation back and forth on a specific topic, then it really allows you, even if you just sit there and listen, to take in a lot. And then, you might have one thing to share, but that could be one thing that really helps and impacts another person.
Yeah, those side conversations are key for sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Craig. But what you said was absolutely, like, I know for a fact that when you're posting online and stuff like that, people do obfuscate some of the facts. And if you mention specific figures, I know I'm always like, wait, I think, does that make me successful or does that make me less successful? Because I'm always like, I want to earn more. I want to be like the big people. And then there are lots of people who might appreciate being where I am. And you're kind of like, well, I don't know. So yeah, that being able to be honest about these things is so valuable, because I know when I speak to other writers and they tell me their finances, I'm like, oh, actually, I'm doing okay. And then that gives you a bit more confidence to continue what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we always tried to do with the blog, that because of where Roland and I both came from when we started around the same time, and we were part of an online community that helped both of us grow as authors tremendously. And but I think over time, as people grew to certain levels of success, they stopped sharing, right? They stopped because they thought they were giving away their secrets or their, whatever. And I get it to a certain level, especially online, where you don't know how many millions of people are seeing this and then posting it somewhere else and it's going everywhere. But with you go to a conference and you're talking one-on-one with somebody, it's not going to be something you need to protect because you're helping this one person or this, like these 3 or 4 people that are sitting there. You're not posting it somewhere and then having it tied back to you forever and ever and going out to the whole world to see, right? Yeah. So in terms of somebody who is an established author, right? So when they come, what do people do? Or do you find that they typically are looking through your list of the different classes and they're like, okay, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, but I want to come for this and I kind of want to see this one. Are they still attending, those ones to see if there's some snippet of, what are they going to get out of it if they feel like they already know everything? There's some authors who think they know everything already.
Yeah, there are a lot of those authors. Then they typically are on the stage a lot of times.
Yeah, well, that's the place for them. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I think you have once. So let's talk about a successful author, okay? And for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to refer to a successful author as someone who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on their writing, okay? And even though obviously, but from the mindset of where you're talking about, I think normally people making 5 figures really can see that there is room for them to grow, but when they start making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, then there's oftentimes like a mental divide, right? You've got the authors that think that they know everything. And I was that author for a long time in terms of, I was like, my books are doing great. I felt like I was someone people could learn from, which is why I started online classes. And it wasn't until really I started looking at my processes and looking, because I had to break down what I knew so that I could teach it to someone else. And I was like, oh, like I know how to write a book. Obviously I've written, 20 books, but I don't know how I'm actually doing this. Like I'm just sitting down and it's coming out, And so, so you've got people that are confident in their path and they don't feel like they need to learn from others, and that's fine, and those people normally come to conferences and they never attend a class. And I'll tell you, I've been to probably 5 or 6 conferences where I maybe attended 1 class, but what I did do is I met with my reps, at different retailers. I met with my publishers if my publishers were at that conference. And I just sat in the lobby and talked to all the people who I have met online or looked up to. And I just had those sort of conversations in the bar, and went to lunches and things like that with people that I have communicated with, but not had a chance to actually meet in person before, bloggers, things like that. So I've done that a ton of times. Now I am very aware of what I don't know, and what I don't know is a lot, and I'm doing okay in audiobooks. Like I make a nice amount of money from audiobooks, but I'm not focusing any of my time and energy on audiobook marketing. I'm not focusing any of my time and energy on translating my books into foreign languages and selling them on a market. I don't care who you are. There is something for you to learn. Like there just is. And especially in craft. I mean, you can never not know enough about craft, or find out a different plotting method or a way of characterization from a new person. So, and ads, how often are ads changing, So you will have authors that attend conferences and they're just there to network and have a weekend off, and they might spend their time up in their room writing because they're away from their kids and their work and their everything else. And they want a weekend that they can just focus on getting words down and relaxing and meeting with people and having a good time. And then I'll sit there in a room and see, someone who I just think knows everything there is to know about everything. And she's in the front row, or he's in the front row, and he's taking notes. And that's why they know everything there is to know about everything, because they are learning as much as they can. So, so every author is different. And when you see successful authors, a lot of them just present, and the rest of the time they're just relaxing and, working on their manuscript or doing whatever. And other ones are in every class they can get to. So if you are in that middle, if you're successful, but you're trying to get to that next plateau and you can't figure out where it is, look at where you aren't successful, and if it's, and if you're just killing it in every arena, more power to you. That's fantastic. But I know for me, there's a lot of gaps where I could be earning more money and I'm not. And that's really where I want to fill in those gaps and then elevate my writing as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm being self-aware. That's like the key to success right there, right? Yeah. No, I totally, I can see some of the draw to, oh, I'm going to go to this conference, honey. And then, you get there and you're like, stay in your room and write. And it's like, oh my God, I have so much
And there's
privacy and
nothing wrong
time.
with that. If you
No,
can
there isn't. I could
knock out
totally see that.
50,000 words and, a
Yeah.
weekend, like that's
Yeah.
fantastic. The tax write-off,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can go down,
Exactly.
eat from the buffet, relax and celebrate when you hit your goal for the day and go to bed early. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, there's something for everyone for sure. I think that's awesome. I think that but you've hit the nail on the head there. There's just people that there's different levels of success too, right? Like, you're saying, oh, you make multiple hundreds of thousands and that's successful. It is. Obviously, it's, I mean, that's a metric that you can't really argue with. But I found that there's a lot of authors that to them, great success is selling 10 books, 20 books, right? Because that's to them what their goal is. And you got to have goals. And sure, one day they'll raise their goals. But, if that is what you need to make you happy, and if what can make you happy is a smaller goal, that's great, because everyone else is killing themselves trying to reach lofty goals that maybe they don't even need to reach, right? But that's funny. And it's true too, in the sense that hearing about the goals that other people have reached can sometimes almost break a barrier in your head. Or I don't know, like I remember Roland, I don't know, the details are fuzzy on me, but I feel like there was a time in the group where we were all sort of at a similar level, and then somebody broke through and hit this other level that we didn't even think. And it might have been like a 5-figure month that nobody had hit before. And nobody had even thought that that was possible. And then somebody hit it. And then all of a sudden, next month, everyone was hitting it because they realized that's possible. It's something I can aim for and achieve, not this like pipe dream that like, why should I bother? Because that'll never happen, right? And so you go to a conference like this and you hear people that were able to achieve that pipe dream that you always thought was never going to happen. And then you realize, oh, yeah, that is possible. So maybe I should buckle down and figure out what it is they're doing that I'm not doing. And all of a sudden I can get there too.
And it's
a blessing and a curse, though, because it also can be really demoralizing where you're like, oh my gosh, like everyone, especially when you're at a conference and everyone on stage is successful, right? Because they put all the people who know all the stuff on stage. And you're like, gosh, I barely broke even on this book that I'm working on, and it's my 8th novel, so you have that. But that's the other benefit about being in a conference is you are around a bunch of normal authors, who are struggling. Some of them are struggling, some of them aren't. And so you can get a better gauge of like, oh, I'm not alone in this sea. There are a lot. Trust me, that sea is way more crowded than the successful sea is. So.
Oh yeah, you can't compare yourself to the guy on stage if you're not the guy on stage, right? You have to compare yourself to everybody else and think maybe I'll get that level one day. But you have to be absolutely cognizant of where you are and what like what everyone else is, and you're probably okay within your group, but doesn't mean you can't get better, and that's why you go to these conferences. Yeah, sure.
I was just going to say, yeah, I remember that so vividly because I had my first 5-figure month around that time. So I think that is a massive thing to actually go around people who do succeed and give you the encouragement, especially when you've been peers with them so long. And suddenly, because for me, okay, it took 11 books before I had my overnight success, but it was like overnight success. It was like going from making $50 a day to $500 a day. And that happens to other people. And when you hear it, it's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, what is the situation with Inkers Con now? I know you had said like it's pretty much almost sold out. So what and where? So tell us all the detail. Where is it? First of all, how many tickets are left? What do they have to pay to go? And what's the what's the online situation? I imagine that's not really capped. How about, is there an all access pass for all the years? Can you get like a all you can eat buffet, or like what's going on?
Well, I think that all access pass is a fantastic idea. We don't have it, but I love that idea. So I'm going to have to set that aside for discussion. But as far as the live conference, we only have about 20 tickets left at the time of this recording. I don't necessarily, we've stopped all promotion on it. So chances are, if you're interested in going, you could probably get a seat. But it's June 3rd through 5th. It's in Dallas, Texas. It's actually in Plano, Texas, at the Hilton Granite Park. Tickets are $745. That includes lunch both days. It includes everything there is to include. There is no upsell or VIP ticket. So it includes full buffet lunch every day, open bars at our parties. There's always food at our parties, things like that. And it includes the digital access too, which is normally a different ticket. The digital, and we have a payment plan that breaks it into 4 payments if you want to stretch out that amount. The online digital access is, right now we're in early registration pricing, so it's $195. It will go up to $245, so it'll go up $50 after June 15th. So if you're listening to this after June 15th, it has gone up, but it's currently $195, and that includes 6 years of access after launch date, and it will launch July 15th, roughly. July 16th is when we'll unlock all of the classes, and you can watch them on demand and participate in the 3 weeks of office hours and roundtables and best-selling author Q&As and a lot of live events like that. So that also has a payment plan, and we're happy to accept PayPal. If you want PayPal, just send our team an email. We'll be happy to get you a PayPal invoice.
So 6 years of access to the content of the year that you purchased, right? Right. Not 6 years worth of.
Yes. Excellent question, because some people get confused. Yeah. So it's 6 years of access to what you've purchased. And if you're interested in an older year, a lot of times those eventually go half off. Like once they're, 2 years old, they go half off. So we do have some people that go back, and once they've watched everything. There's a lot of content to watch, so that's the good news.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it obviously changes, but a lot of it is going to be, it's going to be evergreen, right? You're not going to. Yeah. A lot of stuff doesn't change, right? You maybe some of the marketing stuff that you'd watch.
Advertising classes. Advertising classes, but also Amazon ads hasn't changed much in the last 3 years, so it's some of those basics are still in place.
Yeah. And is it always in Texas?
Yeah, it's always. My sister lives in Dallas, so that's where we put it. And it has a major airport, so that helps. Flights are normally pretty cheap.
Yeah, because I know some of the conferences, it's like a different city every year, and it's always good, right? Because I'm just like, where is it this year? That'll determine if I want to go. Oh, it's in Vegas. Here we go.
That's how RT used to be. It would always move. In some cities, sometimes I'd be like, oh, I don't want to go there. And other times I'd be like, oh, man.
Yeah.
There's more in Iowa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All of a sudden you're getting some of the mayors of small towns inviting you to host your conference. Yeah. And then how many tattoo artists come to your conference thinking that it's a completely different thing?
It's funny because our first year, the hotel manager came to me in 2019. Like, we had just settled in, we just finished our first day, and she came to me and she said, I have to confess, we all thought that you were a tattoo convention. And she said, and we have had extra linens. We've had, because I guess especially fresh tattoos leave marks on the sheets. She said, we were prepared for inks and spills and, and so she goes, you don't know how relieved we are to see a bunch of authors walk in the door. So I thought that was so funny because that didn't even occur to me, but obviously it occurred right away to you.
No, it actually didn't even occur to me. It was Nate, who works with us. He actually said to me that it was, and I was like, it does sound like that. And I used to watch some of those tattoo shows on Netflix, so it should have occurred to me. But yeah, no, that's hilarious.
That is a hysterical story to wrap this up with. But unfortunately, we are out of time. I think we could have probably spoken to you for hours more. And I think there are other topics to speak to you about. I mean, your movie on Patrick Flicks, that's an interesting one to talk about, and your success as a writer. So thank you so much for joining us, Alessandra. It's been really, really, really awesome and incredibly valuable. Craig, do you have any last words?
No, I agree. I think, if we can get you back on at some point, then we absolutely will want to. I think there's a few things that I'd like to pick your brain more about. And then we want to hear about how the conference goes this year, for sure.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll come back anytime. I had a blast talking with both of you. So thank you for having me on and talking about conferences, which is something that I really love. And I don't see a lot of discussion about on podcasts. So thanks again. And yeah, I hope to be back.
Well, thank you so much, Alessandra. All of the links we've discussed and stuff like that will be in the description down below. If you are listening on a podcast, you won't see me pointing my finger, but there we go. If you could give us a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Give Alessandra some love for joining us today. And thank you very much to everybody who's been tuning in. We will be back next week with another episode of Fully Booked. Until then, cheerio.